right, welcome back, guys, to the Improvement Season podcast with a very acutely tired Steve Holt on the other end and a overall tired Pascal Floor here. Both Steve and I aren't really super energetic here today, so we will try our very best to stay focused and concentrated for that hour to give you as much, of course, good content as possible and rambles, as always. So how are you doing, Steve? Why are you tired?
I am somewhat practiced at this because I've done podcasts where I've had to somewhat be on my A game when I'm like overreached and I'm dieted to contest lean levels. So like if you look, I need to actually watch some of the old ones where I have like a shaved head and I'm interviewing someone because that's all like contest prep time. So I wonder how I am during those episodes. I'm probably like, yeah, so what have you been eating?
It's like when you're meeting someone for the first time, you're shaking hands and he tells you his name, and already when he tells you his name, you're not listening.
I'm awful at that anyway.
Yeah.
I'm so bad.
I always hate myself for that.
Yeah.
I'm just like, why the fuck didn't I listen to what he just said? It's like, I don't know what is going on in my head. Like, as if my brain tries to trick me. Just like, okay, no, you're not allowed to actually hear this name. So I'm just like shutting everything off just for that one single second.
It worries me a little bit. I know this is a complete tangent. For me to have done well in any of my exams, I realized to do well, I had to revise like a madman. So I was just doing hours and hours and hours of revision to do well at all. I revised legit like 10 hours plus a day for my exams way in advance. So for me to remember stuff, I have to hear it like a million times. It makes me feel very frustrated. It's like, you know it's in there, but you just, no. I'm much more visual learning, actually. Like I can recognize a face, but the name, I ain't going to remember the name.
Yeah, for me, it's also kind of the same. I don't know what it is. So many stuff that I do remember is quite useless. And so many things that are actually important, I need to have gone through it for once. So for example, I don't know, building something. If I've done it once, no worries. I will always be able to repeat that one more time, right? But other than that, it's just like, I don't know. When Katie's so forgetful, and whenever she says like, okay, where's my mobile phone? I don't know why. I can tell her immediately where it is because I just walked past it and I picked it up just like for a slight second and I know where it is. Such as, for example, with numbers, I don't know what it is, but I can just immediately remember those without actually that being important. And then while I was studying or so, as sometimes I needed to do that as well, needing to sit down and read over something for, I don't know, a couple of times before it stuck. And I also I hate it, right? Because why can't I just decide, okay, this is actually important and the other things aren't as important? And why do I remember those kind of things? And don't know.
I'm always amazed when like the person I think of when I think of this immediately is Menno Henselman. And when he's just talks and he just refers to like 5 different studies, like, oh, this is Smith et al. 1943, paragraph 5. And I'm just like, what? How do you remember? Because for uni, for like our exams, like we're remembering references. It's just like, what? Why? But anyway, why am I tired? So I'll be very surprised. I've never done this actually, pushed for a 6th week of training. I've never really ever considered it. And I'm only slightly considering it. I'm in the first day, the first session of my week 5. So by the end of week 5, probably I won't be considering this. I'm only slightly considering it because I'm having to be a little bit more conservative the last week and a half. Oh no, last week, the whole of last week and this week. Actually, saying this, it sounds really ludicrous to go for a 6th week because I tweaked my lower back. So to push for a 6th week. Okay. So basically, I'm being a little bit more conservative within my lifts. I'm not like pushing. I'm really taking care to brace, just taking the minimum kind of progression on the week. So yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm probably not going for a 6th week, am I? With a tweaked lower back. But
just need to talk through it.
And I just
sometimes that's very helpful, actually.
Yeah, it's true. It makes me feel really stupid talking through it and being like, yeah, so I'm thinking push for 6th week because I tweaked my back.
Yeah.
Because that makes sense. I'm not even sure how I tweaked it. It's just one of those things where like I'd finished my heavy squats last week and I was like, why is my lower back feeling like it's not musculature? It's like something in the lower back just feels like, I don't know what it is. It's just like a little like niggle. I don't know how else to describe it. And if I'm careful to brace, really arch, don't let my lower back at all like go near, like even neutral, try and keep things, I'm okay. But like something like flexion rows, completely out of the question.
Yeah,
in the lower back. I think I'd collapse on the ground and like snap in half or something.
Yeah.
I wouldn't, but it would not be fun. And then like ab crunches, like cable ab crunches, they're completely out of question. But most other exercises are okay. I could do bent over rows with like a loose belt. They seemed okay. So yeah, I'm just like battling through. Like many people get to that kind of 5th week or the kind of final week before deloading. You're kind of like, there's a few niggles that are starting to pick up. I don't normally get this lower back thing. I've maybe had it a few times in my lifting career, and it's part of me is like, Steve, maybe you should just like deload now. And part of me is, if I be very careful to manage this, I'm doing okay. So yeah, I'm a little bit stubborn trying to still train around it. Anyway.
Now, just imagine in the time of the lockdown when you're only having access to something like a barbell. Now, you got the luxury of having your MyraFit pull down or pulling machine there. But just imagine only having a barbell. That limits you already with the exercises that you can do healthy.
Yeah.
But if you then have something like a lower back injury, wow. I mean, that becomes then very, very complicated and actually working around that. That's where the beauty of a gym comes actually really into play, because you can try your very best to take out a body part with doing machine work.
So well said. I think it was Arnie I was checking in with today, and his gyms have opened up where he is. And I was like, I could really do with a hack squat right now because then I could just not worry about my lower back at all. But you also have, did you hack squatted, right? And this is partly why you're probably very tired.
It just reminded me of how fucked up we are. Because I was constantly talking about going back into the gym and how amazing it is. So first and foremost, I need to pull back. On the 28th, gyms have reopened in Brandenburg, which is the state right next to Berlin. And I'm living right on the border, and we are moving to Brandenburg. So I decided to sign up for that new gym anyway, already in advance, because the gyms in Berlin have reopened since the 2nd of June. And it was first to be said that they will first reopen on the 8th of June. So because of that, I decided to sign up for that new gym, right? Went there, trained my first sessions there. And at that gym, I don't know how it is with other gyms in Brandenburg, there were close to no restrictions whatsoever. The only thing that you needed to take care of is to disinfect basically all of the things there. That's it. And the gym, when I was there, was packed. Every single machine was occupied. And I didn't really feel that comfortable, to be honest. Now, someone else was actually then reaching out to me via Instagram because I actually raised my concerns, said like, okay, this is how I feel, and said like that I shouldn't complain about it because he would kill to actually be back in the gym. Where I was just like, I'm not complaining. I'm just stating that I feel uncomfortable with so many people around me. That is also the same when I'm going to the supermarket. It has been ever since the lockdown and all the kind of stuff. I don't feel comfortable. That being said, though, I'm still going to the gym because my stubbornness and my willingness to be at a gym is bigger than just my concerns are, right? Is it responsible? No, it isn't. But that's just how I feel at the moment, right? And I've tried my very best to go at times now when there aren't many people. So on the 2nd of June then, my old gym reopened. They have the hack squat machine, and they have so much more restrictions and limitations there. So much more rules. You need to have a spacing of 3 meters between the people there. You need to disinfect everything. And they have closed a lot of machines. So basically every second machine is closed. And when I got there the first day on the 2nd of June, I had pull day on my plan. So I went in there because I was anticipating of actually using, for the first time in a long time, the chest supported T-bar rows. And they only have like one chest supported T-bar row in that machine, in that gym. And that was closed. And I was just like, no, why? And then I had a look around. I just needed to double check whether the hack squat machine is actually closed as well. And luckily it isn't. But it was a little bit weird because it seemed a bit random of how they closed the machines, because some squat racks have nothing around them and still they were closed, where I was just like, why? Didn't really make that much sense to me. But anyway, enough about that. What I actually then wanted to talk about in regards to why I think that we are fucked up, it just showed to me after the first initial days of being back in the gym, I was just like feeling a so motivated again. A fire just lit again inside of me. I took the gym for granted before the lockdown. And now being able, after 12 weeks of a lockdown, to be able to go back into the gym just show me how much I freaking love to be in the gym and train. And I feel like I want to go there twice daily, 7 days out of the week. That's how I feel. I know that I'm not doing that, but that's just how I feel. And then when the time came that I'm actually needing to do the hack squat, which was yesterday, I woke up at 3:30 a.m. in the morning because I couldn't sleep anymore, because I just thought about hack squatting. And then I just got up, had a coffee, drank my whey shake, and went to the gym at 4 a.m. in the morning to do some hack squats. That is how fucked up we are. Like, come on. Who does that? Who does that? Who dreams of hack squats, then decides to get up in the middle of the night, drives to the gym, and does some hack squats?
I think the only people that would be able to relate to that are some of the audience, some of the few percent in the world that would be able to actually be like, yeah, I can see where you're coming from, Pascal. That you're not that much of a freak. Whereas everyone else would be like, what the fuck?
Yeah. And I'm also very tired due to the first week being back in the gym. And I already told you offline before actually getting on here that I really do think that it has something to do with the systemic demand of like heavy compound lifts and the machines. I didn't overdo it in regards to the RER. I stuck to my RER because, to put it that way, I'm more of a mature lifter. I know that if I overdo it now, it will bite me in the ass later down the line, and it would actually interfere with what I'm trying to achieve. That's why I went in there. I was just like, okay, I'm sticking to the plan. I'm not overdoing things because that is detrimental in the long term. It may be acutely satisfying, but in the long term, it doesn't really do me anything. So that's why I stuck to the RER, 4 RER, 3 RERs, most across the board, relatively low in volume, but of course, an entire selection of exercises. And because of that, I just feel like, wow, this has just like systemically blown me out of the water, because it's just like 12 weeks with minimum equipment, only band work, only body weight work, and then you go in there doing a lot of machine work, a lot of heavy compound lifts. It's just, wow, you're in for a surprise. Let me tell you this.
I guess it's similar to if you rotate like every exercise. Essentially, that's what you've done. I imagine you have almost done that, rotated like every exercise in your entire program. So the novelty factor is just boom. And you've gone from like, body weight and bands and a little bit of load to like typical hypertrophy, like machines and everything. So the actual novelty is even higher than usual. So it makes complete sense, but you adapt to it so quickly.
And for you, the beauty is that you actually had quite a decent amount of equipment now at home. So you won't be in for that much of a surprise. Also, it must be said that due to those neurological adaptations and technical efficiency not being present over the past 12 weeks, I was going in there and shit, was I in for a surprise in regards to the weights I was able to move, and also the repetitions that I needed to do, and especially the balancing aspect of things. I was unracking the bar when it comes to the incline presses, and it felt like as if I've never incline pressed in my life. And this is basically what I also then said to a lot of my athletes in regards to when they are coming back. It's like cycling, right? You've probably learned to ride a bicycle when you were younger. Maybe there was a time in between where you didn't ride a bicycle for like 1 or 2 years. When you're now jumping back on a bicycle, at the first kind of meters, you're just like wobbling around, shaking massively because you have no idea actually on how to ride a bicycle anymore. But after a couple of kilometers, you're back to the groove of things, right? And lifting, I would say, is a little bit more complex than riding a bicycle. So it may also take a little bit longer to actually get used to things. But yeah, I was in for a big surprise, and with the weights I was able to move, and also then the repetition, it was a steep decline, but it will come back quickly.
Yeah, the bike analogy is fantastic, actually, because it's very similar in terms of like the adaptations that take place, the neurological, the skill aspect. And yeah, it will, like next week, you'll probably be able to, like, where you might think you could only normally add a little bit of load or an extra rep, you'll probably be able to add load and reps, similar to starting like a new exercise that maybe you've never done before. Like I had the belt squats, and they just, like, I was adding way more than I'd normally be able to add to an exercise, because I was just like, oh, I've now learned how to actually do this efficiently and effectively. So no, it's cool actually hearing you go through it, because there's probably tons of listeners who are in, actually probably more listeners in a situation that you're in than what I'm in. I reckon there's more people that who didn't have vast amounts of equipment. So it's really valuable to hear you kind of describe how you're being very patient and the kind of feelings that you're getting. And if they feel that way, then it's probably quite normal. So that's really cool.
Yeah. And I mean, just to sum it up really quickly, to give like 3 bullet points for everyone who's now going back into the gym. First and foremost, have a plan at hand and stick to the plan. Don't overdo it. You will feel very motivated, and because of that motivation, and because probably also your energy levels, there's a huge likelihood that you overdo it, and that is not good in the long run, especially because it's like you said, all of the exercises that you're now doing are probably very novel to you now once again, after not having done them for like 12 or 16 weeks or so don't overdo it. Have a plan at your hand, and yeah, so more so 2 bullet points.
I can even remember when I just finished, this is when I was starting my cut months ago now, and I hadn't been back squatting for a while, and I did 1 set of back squats, and in that session I was like, my quads are already sore. Like I can already feel the damage, the disruption in the quads. And I stupidly followed the rest of my plan. I didn't auto-regulate within the session. I did another set and 2 sets of like lunges, and by the time I was sitting down at Wagamama's with all the guys, because it was the session we did at Muscle Works, I was like, my quads are fucked. And they were sore still the next session. So I would only add to that what you're saying. If people are advanced enough to realize what they're getting, if they can think about the like we talked about disruption and soreness last episode, like if you've done 2 sets of whatever exercise and you're already getting insane pump, pretty decently disrupted, and you're programmed 3-4 sets, I just cap it. You can add those sets later. Yeah.
And the other thing that I wanted to add, and I totally forgot, that was point number 3, is expect that your strength levels and your performance don't match what you've done before the lockdown. Go in there. Don't take it too hard if you're not actually matching that performance. And don't be disheartened that you've now lost all of or that means that you must have lost all of your muscle during the lockdown, because that's highly unlikely, to be honest. So yeah, just keep things in perspective and know that these things will come back very quickly. And yeah, but it's fun. It's fun to be back, while at the same time, of course, it comes with a huge caveat when it then comes to the surrounding. If I could choose, of course, then it would be very selfish in saying like, okay, open the entire gym, open all of the machines, but don't allow anyone else in except for me.
Hey, Pascal here. I just quickly wanted to remind you of our online coaching service. At Revive Stronger, we put a huge emphasis on the personal aspect of our coaching. And if you want to take your physique and knowledge to the next level, hit the link in the description below.
That would be the dream. That's the dream. I think when gyms are open, due to open in about a month here, I think we'll have similar restrictions, because before the lockdown, we were very much the same. It was like every other machine was closed. You had to sanitize everything, and 2 meters away from every member. That was like 1 week, and then everything shut down. I think they do the same.
I mean, I really do hope that this possibly also changes a little bit the gym culture, because at least here in Germany, in the gyms I was always working out at, well, it was quite normal for people not to clean their machines or the equipment they've used afterwards, and also not to put the weights away. And now they actually need to do that because everyone is watching them, right? So I really do hope that it kind of changes people to be more sanitized and also more just, I don't know, clean and respectful for everyone around them. Perhaps, I don't know, perhaps it ends up being a good thing. I know how awful that sounds, because, the entire situation isn't a good thing, but it happened, and we can only make the best out of that situation now, right? And hopefully, people take something positive away from that. And yeah.
I know what you mean, because I can use, and everyone will understand this, like analogy, or I guess, is it an analogy or a comparison? Like, I'm thankful, and this sounds ridiculous, that I got hit by a van, because that makes me who I am today and where I am today. If I didn't get hit by that van, like, I wouldn't have had all the head trauma and all the issues I had. Great. But I would not be the person I am today. I wouldn't be in the position. We probably wouldn't be talking like we are now. So, like, sometimes awful things can lead to very positive things in future. Just like, I don't know, various people who have died, or like even like Christians can relate to like Jesus dying, and like how that spawned into like, I don't know, I'll try not to talk about Jesus actually, because I don't really have any idea. Yeah, stick with me getting hit by a van.
Yeah, and especially right now due to the political situation in the US, especially that I mean, most of the time every once in a while throw in something political discussion here, and people are already like, don't discuss politics, and I totally understand that, and especially in the current situation, I don't think it's feasible in doing so. What
was I going to say?
I have something to actually talk about. You and your normal gym, right? So not the home gym. You have matrix machines, don't you?
Say matrix.
Yeah, matrix. So in the new gym that I'm working out at, they have matrix machines as well. There are a couple of ones that are actually quite good. So for example, I love the seated leg curl machine, which I've never had access to before. Never had a seated leg curl machine before. Also, what I love is the leg press machine, where you are actually pushing yourself away from the machine and not the pad coming down to you. You know what I'm talking about?
Do we have that in our gym? Because we have two different ones. We have the like 45-degree plate loaded one, which I don't think you mean.
No,
we have one where you're...
That we also have. We have two from Matrix. The one where it's like 45-degree normal leg press. You're squeezing yourself in and you're pressing the weight upwards, right? And the other one is you are squeezing yourself in and you are pressing yourself away while the seat is actually giving the resistance. And I love that one. That one feels so, it feels so more natural, much more natural to me personally, because the 45-degree leg press machine never worked for me, just due to my hips. I have to go actually a little bit wider then to actually not have a back rounding too much, but I can't do that because of the position, and my left hip just gets irritated by that big time. So the only leg press that works for me is the single leg press from Hammer Strength, but you're sitting upright. That one from Matrix, or the one where you have like two different angles for your feet. You know that? So it's kind of a 45-degree leg press machine, but there is like the pad for your feet is kind of angled in the middle. So you can actually position your feet so that there's more knee flexion or less knee flexion.
I'm not sure. I know I can't picture it, but I think I would.
This one works for me also fantastically, but I only came across one gym that had that, and that was in McFit in Munich. I've never found that anywhere else, and that one works fantastically for me as well. But that typical 45-degree leg press machine, I've tried it so often, and I can't seem to make it work, unfortunately. But then we have now that matrix machine, and that works quite nicely. So yeah.
Do you have to set it up so you set it up really like so the range of motion's okay, but then you have to sit in and squidge yourself in, right? Yeah. Because otherwise you can't sit in it and then set it up because you can't do that.
Exactly.
Yeah, I know exactly.
Like, I don't know. It's weird to actually paint a picture right now, but yes, that's exactly it.
I remember filming some like videos for my story when I was trying to get in there and like saying how this is how you get in there. You like squidge yourself in, slide down, and then like people in the gym think you're like a lunatic. Yeah. Like, what are you doing?
But there are other machines that really aren't great, such as the leg extension machine.
Okay.
Very limited range of motion when you are having like stretched knees or like flexed knees. It's not very much flexed. And for example, in the McFit, I can go like all of the way, where I'm also needing to squeeze my way in because I can actually increase that range of motion to such a significant extent. And with that leg extension machine, it's just like you're going down 90 degrees maybe, like of a knee bend, and then you come up again, and it simply doesn't feel good. I mean,
I recommend, if you can, I was adding pads like yoga pads to the like mats underneath. That extended the range of motion. That felt good. You get a nice few inches extra there, but it's still better than at the moment I'm sitting down on a chair and then using ankle straps and doing them like that. And it theoretically makes sense and it should work really well because your knee is underneath and it's like in a stretch position. You come all the way up, still you've got tension. It just doesn't feel as good as in a gym.
No,
it just
I've tried it like twice and it simply didn't work for me.
Did you try with bands?
Yeah, exactly. And of course, especially with bands, the feet is even more awkward than with cables, for example, because of a different strength profile or resistance profile. For me personally, I'm always wondering, who is the engineer who comes up with those machines? Do you even lift, bro? Like, that's the question I'm asking in my head. And that's why I very much look towards some people such as Das Gym, who are always building their own gym equipment, right? Because it's just like, we know what we want, this exactly, right? And it's just always funny because there's certain machines where it's just like, also the V squat machine. They're normally not great. No, not at all. I've never heard anyone ever saying like, this is the best machine ever. No one ever said that. So, yeah.
I was only going to mention, I don't know if you've ever tried, I don't know if I'm going to describe it right. This leg press has always been my favorite, where it's the 45-degree one, but it's not like it's not on a chassis that moves up and down. It kind of like tilt, like it's on like a pendulum type of, that for me was the best leg press I've ever used. They're so simple as well. It's just on this, it just tilts.
I've never used that one, never seen that one around, but I mean, on the internet, I've seen that, and would always love to give something like this a try as well. It would be amazing to own a gym and just buy equipment that you love and just have a collection of the best equipment that there is around, or become an engineer and produce it yourself.
I'm envious of anyone who's got like a decent garage with and they've got some disposable income, because if that was me, I'd just be like, I'd be looking around for like all these leg presses and whatever. I'm thinking that I was saying the next thing I wanted to get, if I could, would be like a leg press hybrid hack squat. That would be the dream. If you can find a good one of those, I'm not sure.
I don't know. But yeah, absolutely. I would definitely try to get one myself as well if I had the space for that. But I don't. So, as you can see, we're 30 minutes in, and all we've talked about is like nerdy stuff bodybuilders talk about, like the small details of the different machines and just being back in the gym and how good that feels. But I know that every listener can relate to that, so that's all good then. So, should we move over to questions then?
I was only going to briefly ask you about nutrition, how that is all going.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, funny enough, my weight spiked again, but also I have to admit that we had a lot of sushi in the last week. And due to the soy sauce, I know I'm always weighing in a little bit heavier the next 2 days. And because we had it a little bit more frequently here over the past couple, like I think in the last week and a half, we had it like 2 or 3 times. So it's always like, I know that 2 days in a row I'm weighing in heavier, like 1 to 2 kilograms heavier. And that's why I was just like, okay, 6 days out of the last 4 days, I was just like very, very heavy. Something like in the midst of 79 kilograms. But I also know that there always have been like 78.4s across the weeks. So I know that it must be somewhere around there, like 78.7 or 8, somewhere around there. The only reason why we've ordered so much sushi is because we are now moving houses on the 10th of June. And we are moving somewhere where at least we haven't found it yet. There's no sushi ordering service around. So that's why we said like, okay, we need to make the most out of these last days, order as much sushi as possible. And that's what we've done. So yeah, it was probably the last sushi ever in my life. No, just kidding. But for a longer period of time though. And that's why, yeah, it's like the people who are starting to diet and have a lot of junk food in their house and saying like, okay, I need to get rid of that junk food. And the only solution isn't to get rid in the sense of putting it in the bin. No, I'm putting it in the other bin, the physiological bin, my mouth, right? And then you're just like eating everything in anticipation that the diet starts tomorrow. That's how we did it with the sushi. But we didn't go overboard in regards to the calories and stuff.
You would fit it in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Sushi's pretty, like, especially when you're higher carb, mass.
Yeah, and I mean, just like throughout the day, just like save an ice cream here and there, and then you make room for that.
Yeah. Totally.
Right. How's it going for you, though?
Yeah, I don't know if I spoke about it last episode where my weight spiked up. I know I spoke about it in the members site, and my latest vlog is all about kind of weight gain and sometimes seeing these kind of spurts. And yeah, it basically moved to where my target was to the end of the mesocycle, like 2 weeks early, but it's basically stabilized. And I had like not stupidly low, but like a weigh-in that was like a kilo lower than normal. And I was like, okay. And I didn't change anything. Been there so many times before where I just keep things the same. So yeah, I'm still sitting around like 183, 184 pounds, which is 3 to 4 pounds up on where I started. So that's reasonable for me. I'm fairly happy with that. And yeah, I had Indian, which I told you about.
Oh,
I
yeah.
was surprised how good it was.
Oh, yeah. Indian can be very good or it can be very bad. Where they are using a lot of, I don't know, butter, for example. And it's just so... Ghee. Yeah, you just open the box, take a look at the sauce, and the sauce, above the sauce, there's a thick layer of just like fat. And it's just
like orangey.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, whenever I got a dry curry, so I got the chicken tikka, where you can get like chicken tandoori, and it was like legit. It was great. It was good value for money. It was so tasty. So it was Charlotte's birthday, so we got takeaway, had some cake. It was good.
Cool. So you're moving to India then? I mean, we get a lot of applicants coming out of India.
We do. I would like to visit India, and I imagine actually you have to be. At least my parents have been to India, and I think you have to be a little bit careful with your eating over there and the water and stuff because I don't know, various things in there. But they're a lot of vegetarians, aren't they? So
same thing with many countries, right? That you get the shitter for the first days. It's not unheard of though that people are just like, holy shit, I was just sitting on the toilet for the first 5 days.
Especially Indian food. With all the spices. Oh dear. Yes. Okay. That's nutrition done. It's all good.
Okay.
We're enjoying the mass. Appetite's still good. It's grand.
Cool. So because you're always jumping around with questions, I
am.
sometimes don't know where we ended up with answering the questions. So
I think we got all the
just start from the
ones.
top. No, you did have Jake Van Hoff, right?
Let's have a look.
Oh, no. We didn't have that.
Oh, no,
so
we didn't.
Let's go with Jake Van Hoff, the Hoff. So this has been going through my head recently, and I found an obvious answer. Cool. Then we don't have to answer that question anymore. So maybe he just wants to educate us. That's very, very kind. So we know we shouldn't overlap protein feedings too close as possible. But say if at lunch we have a steak, slow digesting, and then 4 hours later, post-workout, have a whey shake, fast digesting. These will surely end up being digested at the same time and end up in a muscle full effect despite the 4 hours between them.
Cool. So as far as I'm aware, the muscle full effect kind of has been somewhat debunked from the research that appears to contradict the idea that you consume an amount of protein and you need it to kind of essentially become not full to fill it up again to maximize MPS, because there's some protein frequency studies that seen, and I couldn't reference them or talk too heavily about them, but they seem to contradict the idea that the muscle full effect is something that we have to be concerned about. And most of, from what I gather from the protein research, is you have like protein as a whole, your total daily protein needs by the end of the day is most important, and then next up is then splitting that between, I think off the top of my head, about 3 to 6 servings relatively evenly through the day is probably a good idea, because there does seem to be some decent evidence to suggest that we should try and kind of get that leucine threshold each time we have a protein feeding. But again, I don't know if that's 100% like absolutely, because there is some contradictory evidence within like protein frequency feedings. So maybe you could even like microdose protein in like 10 feedings through the day. It's just not been studied, I don't think. So, and a lot of the protein studies are all on like whey protein, as from what I've seen, a lot of them are. So that contradicts things because that's not real life. So I would say in my recommendations that I give to clients, it's generally you have your protein target at the end of the day. Try and split that relatively evenly between 3 to 6 meals, and try and get at least 20 grams of like a high quality protein within there, like an animal full amino acid protein, animal protein generally. It's what I'm going for.
Jay, my friend, you have just described one of the fallacies and logical holes of the refractory period theory. And this is one of them. Like one of the biggest, actually, of the food that is still being digested. And if you're eating something like a proper meal, you can probably bet your ass off that it's still being digested. Right? And it wouldn't make sense then that if you consume protein and the other food is still sitting in your digestive tract and you are still withdrawing the protein and making use of that protein, that the other protein is then redundant. Doesn't make sense. The body is so good at actually making use of everything that you put inside it. All right. So we wouldn't be here if it would be so bad at actually making use of food. And just think about it that way, right? From an evolutionary perspective, it wasn't common that we had like frequent meals. So just imagine you have like a big meal, right? So you find something in nature. Eat something like the Hadza. When they find honey, they are just like consuming up to 6,000 calories in one go. So let's just assume.
That's nuts, by the way. Huh? That's a lot of fucking honey.
Yeah. Right? And because you never knew when the next meal is coming, right? And the body is making use of all of those calories in one way or another. Same goes for something like protein, right? It would be foolish to think that in nature, if you were to find something and just like accidentally 4 hours later, you find another thing, right? And you're still digesting all of the protein from the previous meal, that now you're consuming the other protein, that it would be redundant and it wouldn't be made use of. Absolutely ridiculous to think that way, right? So may there be something to the refractory period in the sense of like, not as efficient of making use of the protein. Maybe there is a little bit more of a thermic effect going on, possibly. But it is so marginal, I think, and I assume that this is something that shouldn't even need to be considered. And once again, I just think that this is, the refractory period is just, has so many logical holes in it. And especially just one of these examples of like, the body is always digesting something. At least now in our Western civilization where we are having like frequent meals. You're still probably digesting food from here in the morning, right? And even in the evening time, probably still sitting something in your small intestine. It takes a couple of hours to a couple of days to digest food like appropriately, depending on just the micronutrient and vitamin content as well. And also, of course, the fiber, fat content. It all then depends on how long it's being digested for in your small intestine, and actually then extracting all of the essential minerals and vitamins that you need in that sense, and also, of course, then the macros, right? So yeah, you just highlighted one of the fallacies there.
It reminds me of those people like, if you eat more than, I don't know, if it's 30, 50, whatever grams of protein in one sitting, it's wasted. And it's like, well, no, it's not wasted. The body's not just like pooing it out immediately or whatever it might be. And it's not necessarily going to like, if you're not going over your protein requirements, it's not necessarily being like is it gluconeogenesis? Have I made that up? I haven't used that term in so long, where it's kind of converted to carbohydrates. It's just you might be more optimal if you were having 2 big protein servings to chop up a bit and put it into a third. But then past that, this is what I was saying to a client recently. I was like, there are certain bounds that we need to be within to get optimal, but there's so much optimal within this optimal bound. Like, it's actually quite flexible within like nutrient timing and everything. Like, people like to be so freaking precise with everything. It's like, well, no, like if you want to eat 3 meals one day, 5 meals the next day, okay, you could go into like, oh, the body likes circadian rhythm and chrononutrition. Maybe there's something there, but in like, there's some bounds. Like, if you want to eat 5 meals a day or 4 meals a day consistently, like, it's not like one is going to be way superior to the other. It's actually quite freeing in many ways, which is like flexible dieting. Like, there's so many different foods you can make up to make your meal plan be quote unquote optimal. There isn't special foods. So yeah, anyway.
Yeah,
good answer.
I mean, when it comes to biology and evolution in general, it's most of the time survival of the fittest. And if we as human beings would be so fragile, and this is also something that has then to do with something like mobility and injury and all that kind of stuff, when people are just like making broad claims about, I don't know, whatever, there's probably something that I'm not thinking of, right? There are so many claims out there. If the human body would be so fragile and so bad at making use of the resources, then we wouldn't be here anymore. Simple as that. So, yeah, I don't know if you actually brought up that question, so let's just read that one and then we realize that. So, muffins, pizzicass.
Yeah, we haven't done that.
Okay. During a deload, I tend to stay away from using such things as my wrist wraps, straps, lifting belt, and squatting shoes to perhaps potentially deload the benefits of using these assisting accessories. Do you feel as if this would achieve any potential benefits? Or do you think there's a possibility of joints, grips, tendons, and muscles working harder due to not keeping the accessories around in the deload, and therefore we don't get the best outcomes in fatigue reduction?
So I like this question because many questions like this can basically be like any question about manipulating the training or nutrition or whatever it might be, variable. I can come down to the question of, is it going to allow the goal of the deload to be adhered to, where we're maintaining fitness, not creating an overload and a stress, where we're not allowing fatigue to reduce at its best. And that's the overall goal. We're allowing fatigue to come down, maintaining fitness. Is anything you're doing, like nutritionally or training wise, stopping that happen? So if someone's like, oh, I want to test my 1 rep max, maybe that's not going to allow fatigue to drop as well as it could. Or I've been doing heavier loads, so I'm going to do light loads and many sets and like lots of reps. It's like, well, now you're increasing volume, I'm going to change exercises. You better stay very far away from failure, or that novelty could cause some muscle damage. oh, I'm going to reduce my calories and be in a bigger deficit. You're reducing training volume, your muscle protein synthesis from training is lower. Now you're risking kind of potentially increasing the chance of muscle loss if you're reducing your kind of calories even lower than usual. Like, there's just so many questions you could ask. And if it kind of if you can't answer, yes, it still allows fatigue to drop and fitness to kind of be maintained, then you know it's not the right thing. So when he brought up, or do you think there's a possibility of blah, 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 like basically fatigue not dropping as well as it should, I definitely think there could be. I think you have to be careful about that. So something I sometimes do is like not wear my lifting belt when I do like my squats or RDLs or good mornings, whatever, when I'm deloading. And I probably can't use the same weight as I would, because then it would be more overloading towards my lower back, and that wouldn't lead to the fatigue reduction I want. So if I'm doing that, I have to be careful to reduce the weight by even more than I normally would. But things like lifting straps, I think if you're deloading, it's probably light enough anyway that that's not going to be a problem for your forearms or your grip. But things like your belt, that is something that maybe you'd want to consider just reducing the load a little bit more than you normally would. Anything I've missed there, Pascal?
Yeah, let me try to attack this from a different perspective, because I think your answer was great. I just want to actually give a little bit of a different perspective, that if you lay off these kind of accessories and you feel that it's too heavy, I think that in general, you probably use still too much of a load, even with those accessories still on, if you know what I mean. So if you're saying, for example, you, Steve, if you are using the belt and you're dropping the belt and all of a sudden it is too taxing for the lower back, isn't it then still too much load in a deload? Because we know in a deload setting, the main purpose is to reduce all of the accumulated fatigue. And I rather want people to go too light than too heavy, because we also know that there's no benefit in going too heavy in a deload. Because also we know that we could even not train at all. However, we also know that doing something is probably still better than doing nothing at all. But that something must be very much submaximal or submaximal kind of stress for the entire system. So if you go in there, it should be, no matter what accessory you're using, it should be very, very untaxing and unchallenging. No matter whether you're using a belt, no matter whether you're using straps. If you then end up in the situation of like, okay, when I'm not using the belt, it's still too heavy, then probably it would have still been too heavy with the belt as well. That's just my take on it.
Hi guys, Steve here. Just wanted to take a moment of your time to remind you of the Revive Stronger member site. Inside you'll find a thriving forum, a growing exercise library, presentations, research reviews, and courses. If you want to get involved, sign up via the description.
Yeah, I'd say unless you're incredibly strong, even then maybe that would still be the case. I think he probably has, like, to be honest, you could throw the question back at Muffins and be like, when you do that, do you feel like you're still getting the fatigue reduction you should be? If you are, great. And from hearing your perspective there and talking that through, sounds like he should be.
Yeah. I think those accessories should only help you in a mesocycle to actually cause perhaps a little bit more of an overloading stimulus. But if you then drop it in a deload and it's still too heavy, it should be the other way around, because you shouldn't necessarily need those in a deload, because that just artificially increases your capacity of handling an overloading stimulus, right? And that's why I would say, like, actually, I would encourage you to drop things such as the belt, just to make sure that you actually really do recover. Because, for example, when it comes to the squat, if you can use 10% more of a load, it's still systemically 10% more demanding than if you don't use that load and actually don't use the belt and actually drop the load even more so. What is the benefit of actually then using the belt in a deload? I don't know. I can't see the case for it, just because if we really boil it down simplistically, a deload is there for fatigue reduction. A mesocycle is there for overloading stimulus. We also know not doing something is actually feasible. Doing something a little bit that is sub-maximal load is still better. Thus, we want to, as minimum as we can, to still keep those probably neurological adaptations and especially the technical efficiency in place so that we're then setting ourselves up for the next mesocycle. I think a deload is not necessarily there to very much consider loading or reps per se. Yes, it's a guideline, but it shouldn't be the main focus. The main focus, if you want to reduce the fatigue, should just be like go in there, get a little bit of blood flow in, go through the ranges of motion so that you keep those new neurological and technical adaptations, and that's it, basically.
Yeah, I quite often, I'd admit this, and I don't think it's a bad thing, really. I get quite lazy in my deloads sometimes.
Yeah, me too.
I just take as little with me to the gym as possible. So I quite often, like you said, don't take my belt, don't take my squat shoes, and I might even just I might put some plates under my heels, I might just squat in flats, just because I know it's enough to keep the technical efficiency of like a squatting pattern, and I just want to squat lightly for some blood flow. So yeah, deloads, the more I do them, the less I think about them, and the less I do when I go and do them, and I really take them as a load off. I know some people really like to focus on technique and everything in them, but I tend to use that. I focus more maybe on that during the mesocycles, and I actually use the deload week as like, actually, I kind of want to switch off. I listen to a podcast and it's just like...
Me too. And there are even times, so I'm reducing the frequency, I'm reducing the volume, I'm reducing the intensity. And sometimes it's just like, I'm going in there and it's just, I don't know, I would just like switch the exercises even to something where I know, all right, this doesn't cause any kind of DOMs or so. So for example, it's the best example that always comes up. Instead of doing an RDL, I'm switching over to the 45-degree hyperextensions, doing a couple of reps there. That's all. And then, moving forward.
I quite often will remove exercises as well. So if I have like, I don't know, like here, actually when I deload here, I do belt squats and squats like I did today. I'll remove the belt squat. I can't be fucked to set all that up. I'll do a couple of sets of squats and maybe one more, and I won't do any of my belt squats. Like it's just, deloads are just literally deload from training, like deload anything annoying, awkward, all those factors you said. Yeah.
I mean, Muffins, I don't know if you are part of our membership side. I've done a presentation on deloads that is like a 2-part series, 1.5 hours long, about how to set it up, different ways of setting it up. So also then different kind of setups in the way of like, okay, exercise selection, frequency manipulation, volume manipulation, intensity manipulation, all these kind of things, right? So if you're interested about something like that, I mean, it's far away from the question that you actually asked, but maybe someone else is actually interested in how to properly set up a deload. I would very much encourage you to check out that presentation, because I'm not often proud about my work, but right now I'm a little bit proud about that presentation, and maybe that would change in the future once again, but yeah.
Slowly, that's what I want to do, is like produce, like on the members site, it's just have presentations, just like, if I'm like leaving a bit of a stamp on the world with that piece, and sometimes you need to do the presentation to be able to gather thoughts and think about things in a way that you've never thought about them before. It's actually really nice.
Yeah, and hopefully also explain it in a way that you couldn't do in just like, I don't know, a text message or in a video check-in for some athletes, where I'm just like able to refer to the Prima Phase ebook, for example. So I give you a broad example of what a prima phase is, but if you want to know more and learn more about the prima phase, the reasons as to why, feel free to check out the ebook, the audiobook, the presentations that we've done on it, and then you can get a very, very good insight as to why.
Yeah, actually, I was going to say the prima phase was one of those where it's like, when we actually put like, not pen to paper, but when I started typing, I was like, and then you guys challenged me on it, and we then put it all together. I was like, oh, there's actually things I hadn't necessarily thought about fully that I've now thought about more from writing it all together. So yeah.
Cool. So let's move on. Roman Garm, you had one, I think, right? Only from Roman. If an exercise stagnates, how long do I need to stay away from desensitization before I put it back in my program? Is 1 week enough, or
this is the one we answered?
Okay.
We didn't do the other one, I don't think.
All right. So once again, Roman Garm, what's the more beneficial part of an exercise for growth? A big stretch or full contraction? Did we answer that one? I have no idea.
I don't remember answering that one. Maybe we should answer it really quickly.
Yeah, go ahead.
My quick answer would be, I hate these sort of questions, and nothing against you, Roman, but I hate them because both elements, like for the like exercise as a whole, is beneficial. Putting both together is more beneficial than taking them apart. I don't know why you'd ever take apart having a stretch and a full contraction. I think they come together in harmony. If I was going to answer it, like from what I'm aware of, the stretch under load is probably more important than the full contraction. But together, I still think that's superior to just stretch under load. Like you could just stretch all your muscles out. I think you'll be better like doing a curl all the way down and then dropping the weight is probably better than just having the weight at the bottom and curling all the way up. But why not do both?
I mean,
and get the most.
I think, and I'm quite certain about it, actually, I think that there are even studies looking at only eccentric portion of a lift.
Yeah.
And also then compared to eccentric followed by a contraction or a concentric phase. And of course, that kind of lifting style, which is basically what every one of us is doing. I would be very curious and I would be very surprised if any one of our listeners, except for a perhaps very special audience of like, I don't know, for a specific skill or so, is only doing eccentric load training. Where it's like, I don't know, you're starting from the top of the RDL, you're lowering it down, and someone else is putting it on a plate once again, and you are starting it once again. Maybe someone, an Olympic weightlifter, I can't see why that should be the case though, but maybe someone is doing that for a particular reason. But I think every one of us is actually having a concentric period in a lift and then an eccentric period of a lift. And if you then compare those two with another, I would even say, such as you, that has been shown to be the case as well, that stretch under load, the eccentric portion of the lift probably is more hypertrophy-ish than other parts.
And actually, I can plug again because I've done a presentation on principled exercise selection for hypertrophy, and I talked about essentially dynamic contractions where it includes both portions, and they're shown in studies to be the most hypertrophic on average. So, yeah,
cool.
I can plug again.
So then let's attack one more question, and that is... Sorry, guys. Evo. He said, now this time we should just call him Evo. With gyms reopening. Yeah, it helps.
Evo's great.
With gyms reopening in my country after 2 months being closed, let's say we take those 2 months as a prima deload active recovery. What general approach would you recommend when designing our first mesocycle back in the gym in terms of volume, intensity, relative intensity, etc.? Hope your gyms open up soon too.
Cool. So I think Pascal kind of described this really well when we were first chatting.
Right?
And in many ways, it's how you would normally, if you've actually been doing, well, it depends. If you're doing an actual primer phase, you've got like the lifts and you've got decent kit at home, then you just do it like you normally would after a primer phase. And in that sense, you've resensitized a bit. So your minimum effective volumes are probably a bit lower than normal on average. But if you haven't been training at all, like active recovery deload, they're probably even lower than that. So just take it super conservatively. Know that you'll need less. Maybe auto-regulate within the session if you feel like you're getting really good pumps and disruption earlier than you think, and have that plan. Basically, listen, you've already got the answer for the question.
On another note, once again, a plug for the membership side. Today, this is the date of the recording though, Thursday the 4th, Harry's presentation was actually coming out today about how to transition back into a gym environment from the lockdown. So you want to check that one out as well. So moving on to Felipe Ferreira, which is Bruno, actually, a client of mine. And we have actually answered that question quite extensively in the past or a couple of times. If you have a stronger, thicker arm or any other analogous body part than the other, do you train them differently or they even out over time? Just to give a quick answer, because once again, we've covered that one a couple of times already. You start off with the weaker side first. So unilateral work, start off with the weaker side first, then do the other part. And then over time, because the weaker side always needs to do a little bit more work than the stronger side, it will then balance itself very likely out over time. And if you're then doing bilateral work, most of the time it's the same principle, that the other body part, which is stronger, does sub-maximal load, marginally sub-maximal load, where the other one is actually needing to do a little bit more of the work. So then over time, it should balance itself out. I would be very surprised to see a significant discrepancy between muscle groups unless there was some kind of accident or injury that prevented you from actually train that muscle group for a very long period of time. Other than that, I think that the discrepancy is mostly in the head and disbalances, and possibly just from fat distribution as well, and not really from a muscular standpoint. And if you are then coming from a strength perspective, this has, of course, something to do with a little bit of neurological adaptations and then the motor unit recruitment in that body part.
Yeah, the only thing in addition I am saying, is Jess DeLangelis has our intern at Revive Stronger. I butchered the last name. Yeah, her last name. Sorry, Jess. So she unfortunately has quite a big discrepancy in her lats, which was discovered more late in her level of advancement. So it had become somewhat not severe, but I guess it is almost severe. So something in addition to what you said that we're doing is, if she has programmed 3 sets, she does 2 sets on her strong side and the 3 sets on her weak side. So she just takes the last set. And so there's a little bit more volume for that side. That's the only change.
Cool. Let's do another one. We have 5. I mean, we are at an hour now, but let's roll with the last one because then we've covered them all. So Bartolomei Jasgolski. If you were to start as a novice beginner again, what would you do differently? What program would you choose? And I found that very interesting. That's why I wanted to bring it up one more time.
I don't know, actually. Novice and beginner again. What would you do? Okay, no, I know. For the first question, I would definitely get a coach, and I'd get someone, an in-person coach initially as well, for sure, who could teach me how to actually lift, because I was self-learning and I wasn't lifting well for like the first 5 years. I was just kind of doing ego lifting and just watching other people, trying to learn how to lift via them. So that would be like foundation, learn how to lift. That would be something I'd definitely change. And then I think also, again, it's difficult, but I wish I was better educated with nutrition. I was very much under the false perception that there was good and bad foods, clean foods, dirty foods, and that if I just ate loads of protein, I'd get jacked and lose fat, and that just didn't work at all. So I wish I'd been better educated with that. Maybe read Flexible Dieting by Lyle McDonald. I think that's probably a good starting book, and that was one of the books I later read that really helped me get to grasp with things. There's probably better books now, but that's a fairly easy read for someone who's just getting into everything. And then program-wise, I guess something like maybe the RP templates, like their beginner like programs, male physique templates. I think they're probably not a bad place to start. I can't think of, or maybe the muscle and strength pyramids. Maybe they have some beginner and novice programs within there. They'd probably be okay. But I mean, as a beginner/novice, I wouldn't be too concerned about exactly the program, because just going in and lifting is sufficient. So I just want to make sure that I wasn't injuring myself. I was learning good technique, and like I was going into the gym and just trying to progress very steadily over time. So any program that would do that, and probably not focusing as heavily on strength as I did at the beginning. I really thought that was the key, like more load the better, but no. Yeah, so I think
I think that the single thing that would take care of everything else is basically what you said there in the beginning, and also that would be my thing to do, and that is get a proper coach. And I'm talking about a proper coach. of course, that is hard to actually come by because there are so many shitty coaches out there, and finding a proper coach as the first coach, when you have no idea of what a proper coach looks like, is actually very, very hard to come by. Yeah. But let's just assume that you have an understanding, or that you find a good coach. He would then be able to make me avoid all of the mistakes that I've done in the past, because this is something of human development and how we evolved to where we are right now. That science always evolved over time. You didn't need to learn all of the discoveries and findings from the past centuries because someone else already did that. You just needed to learn those, perhaps, to actually then take it a notch further. And the same applies here. I've done so many mistakes in the past that could have been avoided if I had someone by my side who could talk about avoiding these typical pitfalls. Also, he would then give me a proper program. He would also make me help to avoid to always constantly be in a cutting phase, for example, which is one of the biggest regrets of myself, of my lifting career, of having been in a caloric deficit for too often and too long in my kind of lifting career, right? Then also with the program, right? Trying to be a power lifter, trying to go too heavy, not knowing what proper technique is. These are all things a proper coach can actually take care of. So this is the biggest advice I could give any novice, any beginner, is getting a coach. The culprit here is, though, that a novice or beginner can't see the value in a coach yet. Most of the time, they are always wiser in hindsight, and then they are at the place where we are at and saying like, okay, I should have gotten a coach. This is unfortunate. So, yeah.
I was just thinking, I wonder if it's because when you're a novice, gains come so easy. So it's just like, you don't even think you need a coach because it's like, well, I'm getting stronger every session. Why would I need a coach? And then you get injured. And then it's like,
I think it's just like the typical Dunning-Kruger effect taking place here. And also, I see very high similarities to other aspects in life. Most parents had their fair share in actually drinking alcohol, maybe even taking some drugs, making major mistakes in life. And the kids still don't listen. There are just certain things that the kids have to experience for themselves. And maybe it's kind of the same procedure here. I see the similarities because generations over generations have made the same mistakes, and still we continue to make the same mistakes over again. Whereas in the scientific field, there is a development. We are always getting smarter, always developing new things that are built upon the last inventions. But when it comes to these kind of developments, not that much of a development going on there, unfortunately.
Yeah. Damn. And on that bombshell,
get a coach.
I guess we're done.
Yeah, we still have some slots open. So, I mean, if you want to apply and work with us with Team Revive Stronger, right, and take it to the next level and avoid making all of the mistakes and spinning your wheels and wasting years, man, I wasted years. That could have all been avoided. And that is one of the biggest regrets, that these years I never get back. Oh. Head over to revivestronger.com. Online coaching. Apply now.
We've done so many plugs. I feel a little bit like dirty. Yeah. Hopefully, there's some value dotted in there.
Today was actually quite nasty, right? so many plugs, as if we are a salesperson, which we aren't. We are only here to help. I know that doesn't sound convincing, but it's coming from the right place.
We can only help you if you pay.
Thank you very much, guys, for listening. As always, hit the notification button, hit the subscribe button, and also hit the thumbs up if you like the episode. If not, of course, there's always that individual who probably hasn't listened like 1 hour and 10 minutes and hits the thumb down. If you did and you didn't like the episode, that's totally cool. But it helps the algorithm if you support us. And other than that, buddy, next time we will be speaking, you won't see this.
You're going to be moved.
I am then in the new house. So
in your own actual room.
Yeah.
Not you.
So, guys, Until next time, in the new house then. Cheers.
See you guys. So I'm Steve Hall, founder of Revive Stronger and a coach of Revive Stronger.
My name is Pascal Flor. I'm the co-owner of Revive Stronger and also a coach, of course.
Revive Stronger has probably been going solidly for 3 years, roughly about 3 years.
Revive Stronger, to me, it is becoming kind of my child, my foster child. It's the gathering and getting together of like-minded people.
We've been expanding the coaching team, which is helping us help more people, but each coach can only help a certain number of people.
Right now, it's all over the place. We have YouTube, we have Facebook, we have Instagram, but there isn't that community aspect behind that.
And so the next step for us is developing a membership site.
So basically, we want to create a family and a community that is then benefiting from another.
A really cool community for people within our little niche is going to be a website.
They will get early access to our podcast.
You can access us, ask us questions.
The community aspect, we have a forum there. You can ask questions, but also you can log your journey.
There's also going to be courses on there.
Courses, presentations on different topics. Discount of past seminar footage. We will log our journey as well. We'll start vlogging.
We're going to have documentaries.
Our entire athletic journey. Furthermore, they get access to an exercise video library.
The exercises that we love for hypertrophy and maximizing hypertrophy, we're going to go through those in depth, telling you how to execute them.
We kept them concise and also mobile friendly so that you can watch them in between your sets.
I'm super excited to grow this community. The amount of value that we're going to be delivering is huge. And I'd love you to be part of it.
You will get so much out of that.
I'll see you inside.